Why are sparkling wines the most successful wines in Brazil? Is it the terroir? Is it something else that's making them excel? How does double pruning and winter harvesting help Brazilian vineyards produce higher quality wines? And how did family farming traditions shape the country's wine regions, and what is the crossover between coffee and grape cultivation? In today's episode, you'll hear the stories and tips that answer those questions in our chat with Dr. Tufi Meyer, author of the fabulous new book, Wines of Brazil. By the end of our conversation, you'll also discover the biggest misconception about Brazilian wine, how Brazil's annual wine production compares to other South American producers like Argentina and Chile, why Brazil's wine industry hasn't developed as much as those two countries have, how Portuguese colonial policies impacted the development of Brazil's wine industry, how the country's massive size and climate diversity influence viticulture, what is unique about tropical viticulture in Brazil, why some Syrah wines from Brazil resemble those from the Northern Rhone in France more than they do Australian Shiraz, and the challenges Brazilian vineyards face due to the humid climate in certain regions. Do you have a thirst to learn about wine? Do you love stories about wonderfully obsessive people, hauntingly beautiful places, and amusingly awkward social situations? Well, that's the blend here on the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. I'm your host, Natalie McLean, and each week I share with you unfiltered conversations with celebrities in the wine world, as well as confessions from my own tipsy journey as I write my third book on this subject. I'm so glad you're here. Now pass me that bottle, please, and let's get started. Welcome to episode 354. On CTV Morning Live, we chatted about pairing wine and tomatoes. In Ode to the Tomato, Chilean poet Pablo Neruda described them as, quote, the stars of the earth that are upon the table, belted by summer, and grant us the festival of ardent color and all-embracing freshness, end quote. Now is the time to indulge in tomatoes while they're in season, with their thin skins that slide off plump flesh, like silk lingerie that yield their juicy, chin-dripping pleasure, the opposite of those tired February pellets that taste like midwinter despair. Trying to be a little Neruda myself here. Tomatoes hang heavy in our backyards, they fill farmers' market bins, and as Neruda envisioned, quote, the streets filled with tomatoes, midday summer, light is halved like a tomato, its juice runs through the streets, end quote. Take me away with you, Neruda. All right, so let's imagine we're going to eat an all-tomato meal. We'll start with raw, uncooked tomatoes. These are the toughest on wine because of their high acidity. So I'd suggest a crisp white wine like an Austrian Gruner Veltliner or a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, both of which I call salad in a glass. They have this vibrant acidity to match the sliced tomatoes on a caprese salad with buffalo mozzarella, basil, and olive oil. Ingredients like basil and olive oil help soften the perception of acidity in tomatoes. Salting them achieves the same effect. In the 1950s, the Trattoria di Vincenzo on the Isle of Capri created the first insalata caprese. Gruner Veltliner would also work with gazpacho and other cold tomato-based soups. In tomato chutney, the pairing challenge isn't so much the tomato, but the vinegar, which can wreak havoc on wine, unless you have one with vibrant acidity to match, like, say, an Italian Barbera. You could also try cool climate Pinot Noirs from Burgundy, Canada, New Zealand, and Oregon, all of which have that edgy acidity and tartness needed for these tomatoes. So what about sun-dried tomatoes, or tomatoes that are served warm but not cooked? Sun-dried tomatoes are like grapes and people. The longer they hang around on the vine or the planet, the more they become themselves, concentrated, wizened versions. The drying process increases their umami flavor, that savory deliciousness that comes from their high glutamate, an amino acid which concentrates and continues to rise as they ripen. Umami is the fifth taste, along with sweet, sour, bitter, salty, that we detect in our mouths, and it signals high-protein foods. So we salivate and produce digestive juices in response. Umami is great for our health, as are the other components in tomatoes, including antioxidants such as lycopene that are believed to decrease the risk of certain cancers, heart disease, as well as overall inflammation. All tomatoes contain lycopene. Cooking them increases the bioavailability of lycopene, meaning your body can absorb and use it more efficiently. The heat breaks down the tomato's tough cellular walls, releasing more lycopene. So tomato sauce, paste, and soup often deliver more lycopene than raw slices. A little fat helps too. Olive oil, cheese, or avocado alongside tomatoes enhances lycopene absorption since it's fat soluble. Thanks for that explanation, ChatGPT. So when tomatoes are served warm but not cooked, try a zesty rosé, or even a rosé cider, or plain cider, your choice. So do the wine recommendations change for other types of tomatoes? Yes, indeed, and I'm glad you asked. Not all tomatoes are created equal. Yellow, golden, and purple varieties are often sweeter than red, so they require a wine with a bit softer acidity and more ripe fruit aromas like Chilean or Australian Pinot Noir. These have the juicy, ripe berry flavors that go well with these sweeter varieties, including, I did not know this either, more than 175 varieties of heirloom tomatoes in various sizes, shapes, and colors and tastes. I love walking through farmers markets and seeing all these things. I just want to take them home and not eat them, just look at them. Of course, that would be wasteful. One of the most famous types of tomato is San Marzano, a plum tomato that's longer and thinner than other tomatoes and is renowned for its flavor that balances sweetness and acidity. There are also cherry tomatoes and coeur de boeuf, or ox hearts, also named for their shapes. What about cooked tomatoes in a dish like tomato sauce? Tomatoes served cooked in a multi-ingredient dish or sauce, such as ratatouille or marinara, makes them far less harsh in terms of the acidity. The cooking or roasting process brings out a more caramelized sweetness in tomatoes that further softens the acidity. Many Italian reds are even described as having aromas and flavors of sun-dried tomatoes. A juicy Italian red will complement with its ripe red fruit aromas, a touch of spice, and some mouth-awakening acidity. And what about pizza? Neapolitan pizza, traditionally made with San Marzano tomatoes grown in the volcanic soils near Mount Vesuvius, are crushed into a simple sauce. Then we have the fresh mozzarella di bufala, buffalo milk mozzarella, or fior di latte, cow's milk mozzarella. How you liking my accent so far? I can stop anytime. And then the toppings are fresh basil leaves and a drizzle of extra virgin olive oil. This is making me so hungry. So the two classic types of Neapolitan pizza. Number one, pizza margherita, tomato, mozzarella, basil, representing the Italian flag colors, red, white, and green. And pizza marinara, tomato, garlic, oregano, olive oil, no cheese. So the cheese, though, in pizza margherita, really softens the acidity in the tomatoes. Try Canadian or German Riesling. So where can we find you and these wines online? Glad you asked. On Instagram, I'm at Natalie McLean Wine, and online, of course, my website is nataliemclean.com. I'll post all of these pairings in the show notes at nataliemclean.com/354. Back to today's episode, in case you, like me, almost forgot about it. Two of you are going to win a copy of Tufi Meyer's terrific new book, The Wines of Brazil. If you'd like to win a copy, please email me and let me know you'd like to win. Doesn't matter where you live, I'll choose two winners randomly from those who contact me at natalie@nataliemclean.com. In other bookish news, if you're reading the paperback or ebook or listening to the audiobook of my memoir, Wine Witch on Fire, Rising from the Ashes of Divorce, Defamation, and Drinking Too Much, a national bestseller and one of Amazon's best books of the year, I'd love to hear from you at natalie@nataliemclean.com. Happy to send you signed book plates. All right, on with the show. Tufi Meyer is a graduate of Brazil's most prestigious medical school, UFMG, with a PhD in surgery. He was then a professor at the University of Vale de Rio Verde for 40 years and has been a wine educator since the 1990s. He holds a WSET Level 5 honors diploma, as well as a certified educator certificate on sherry and port, as well as he is a French wine scholar instructor. He lives and works in Brazil's southeast region, teaching at the Wine School Brazil, and has recently published The Wines of Brazil, part of the classic wine library of L'Académie de Vin, and he joins us now from his home in Brazil. Welcome, Tufi. We're so glad you could join us.
Hi, Natalie. Hi, everybody. It's a very great satisfaction to be here.
Excellent. Well, we are so pleased. You've got a fascinating history, so we're going to dive right into it. Now, you have like an extensive, impressive background. I mean, you have a medical degree and then you got a PhD in surgery. You had a long career as a university professor in a different field from wine. What led you to want to become a wine educator in the 1990s and then eventually a wine writer?
Well, that's a good question. I think that it is maybe because I love wine so much. Even my childhood, I may say. I could join teaching at university with learning and teaching about wine. It was just of natural.
And was wine part of the table on the family table when you were growing up? Were you allowed to have a little sip or whatever when you were a child?
Yeah, but in this way, my father bought some sweet wine. He mixed just a little portion of wine with a large glass of water, put more sugar in this refreshment we could drink in only Sunday lunch.
Okay. So in moderation for sure. Sounds like a nice introduction. Now, you mentioned that you began studying wines even before college and that your fondness for wine started with a pink, sweet-ish wine, sweet, I should say, made in San Paulo from Labrusca grapes. It was curiously labeled Astronauta, like an astronaut, I guess. Where were you having this wine? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about whatever you remember from it.
Yes, it was a wine that my father bought and allowed us to sip with water during Sunday lunches. And later we changed it from this wine to other, from Labrusca too, until we started to know vinifera wines, and then things changed.
That's great, Astronauta. You mentioned that it's impossible to thank everyone deserving of gratitude for their participation in your book. Is there one person who stands out who really helped you develop your understanding of Brazilian wine?
Well, I think it would be unfair to mention just one person, but I should start with Jorge Tonieto from Rio Grande do Sul, who devised the multi-criteria climatic classification for viticulture. And he was so very important in geographical indications also here in Brazil. Teacher too, like me. He is a very important person for wine in Brazil. I could mention many others.
Okay, sure. Is he very much part of forming Brazil's appellation system? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, he and his team, they work at Embrapa Uva and Vinho. Embrapa is a very important government agency in Brazil developing agriculture. They have a wine division, and he works there with a large team developing geographical indications.
Huh, great. And so, from your extensive travels throughout Brazil for this book, did you encounter any particular local traditions or dishes or pairings that are unique to Brazilian wine? Like, is there a pairing that stands out for you, like a particular dish?
Well, many in fact, but I would like to mention our feijoada, which is a heavy pork and black beans dish, quite a lot of fat. It goes so well with our red sparkling wines made in the south, for example, by Valmarino. This is a very good pairing, in my opinion,
And why does it work?
because despite the fat in feijoada, this wine has a very high acidity that cuts the fat, as we say. Works splendidly.
Sparkling red wines, I didn't realize that was a big thing in Brazil. I don't know. I have to confess, I didn't know a lot about Brazil wines until I started getting into your book. So this is all new to me. But how important are sparkling wines in Brazil?
They are all important for us. They are the most successful type of wines in Brazil. The reds are exceptions. Most are white and pink, of course, but they are highly successful.
Why are the sparkling wines the most successful wines? What is it about the wines of Brazil or the terroir that really makes them excel? I would have just assumed red still wines would have been your flagship wines, but why are sparkling wines more important?
Well, we have all sorts of sparkling wines, from traditional method make like champagne to sweet made from muscat in the Asti fashion, passing through tank methods, sparklers, but all of them have a very important character. It's fruit ripeness. Fruit is forward in Brazilian wines. Maybe elegant sometimes or very well declared at other times, but it's easy to perceive and it's easy to like it, together with the fresh character of our sparklers.
Oh, I'd love to taste one. We just don't get them here in Canada, but this is going to open people's minds to traveling, to taste them there, and to reading your book. So hopefully, maybe someday we'll get them in the market here. What is the biggest myth or misconception about Brazilian wine that you'd like to say just not true?
I think that by far the greatest misconception, including here in Brazil, is that our wines are not good or are not well made or cannot equal other wines from other traditional countries. They can. Most emphatically, we have a very, very large amount of good quality wines, high quality too. Drink Brazilian wine more.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe paint us a picture. How much wine on average? I know it'll vary year to year, but how much wine does Brazil make each year, say, and then maybe compared to, say, Argentina or Chile?
Well, we make much less. Chile makes about 10, 11 million hectoliters of wine every year. Chile is the fourth, fifth largest producer of wine in the world, not us. We make about 3.5 million hectoliters per year, which is way less than Chile and Argentina.
Right. Okay. And maybe paint us a mental map for those who aren't as familiar with South America. Where would we find Brazil on a map versus Chile and Argentina?
Well, Brazil is the largest country in South America and the fifth largest country in the whole world. We have more than 8.5 million square kilometers area. To compare, Chile has less than a million and Argentina 2.7. And so we are very much larger than all the countries in South America. And we have borders with all except Chile and Ecuador. If you take the map of South America, it's much more like say, an inverted triangle. Most of it in the right of the map is Brazil.
Hmm. Okay. And now you, very eloquent, you say, we wine lovers know well how closely this blessed dram drink is linked to emotion. Is there a particularly emotional or memorable experience you had while researching or writing your book?
Well, I have a lot of them, but something I don't forget is when I went to a small winery in the center of Rio Grande do Sul, not the traditional winemaking region. This winery is called Velho Amancio. You see, I arrived there at a Sunday night, late in that Sunday night, and they received me so well, so gentlemanly that we talked about their wines till late in the night. I cannot forget this, how well they did receive me.
Oh, wow. Must have been a memorable evening. Were you on a deck or in their living room, or where were you talking in well into the night?
Well, inside their wineries, they have a very good tasting room with a very large table made from one single trunk of a Brazilian tree, decorated tiles and some. And they are so agreeable persons. The father Rubens and Aline Fogaça, the enologists, We could stay there for hours and hours alone. Visit Velho Amancio.
Yes. And so, Brazil, back to some of the key numbers, how much wine does it export? I'm assuming that's minimal as well compared to Argentina and Chile.
You see, Chile is one of the largest wine exporters in the whole world. They make about $1 billion per year in wine exports. Argentina, less, but not so much less. Brazil is dwarfed near them. Our exports reach a few $1 million a year. And so it's so small amounts that we cannot compare with those two giants, of course. But it's growing slowly.
It's growing. Okay. And why is it a much smaller industry in Brazil? Is it because of the climate or is it the history or why hasn't it developed as large as Argentina and Chile have?
Well, we have history, we have geography, we have climate and traditions, and a lot of other things. You see, we were ruled by Portuguese during centuries, and they wanted to send their wine to here, and during some time we were forbidden to make wine.
The Portuguese didn't want the Brazilians to make their own wine?
Yeah, there was a queen in Portugal in the early 1800s, Mary the Crazy, Maria Louca, who forbade any manufacturer in Brazil, including wine.
So they could export Portuguese wine over and sell it to Brazilians?
Yeah, exactly, precisely. And it was, we had a very long time to recover and start wine industry again.
I see. Okay. Now, Brazil is often perceived as a tropical country, but you argue that this view of the country is too superficial given its vast complexity and heterogeneity. What is the region like? I mean, I'm sure it's very diverse, but are there certain things you would highlight? Like, is there mountain ranges or rolling hills or tropical forests or all of it? How would you describe the land?
This is a very complex country, it's so large. You start in the north with the tropical rainforest, of course, but then near in the northeast, it's a desert, it's semi-arid. You go down and you find a large amount of the country, which is comprised by highlands. We call it here Planalto or Brazilian highlands. And to the south, you have mountains, you have flat terrain, and the climate varies from very hot in the north to quite cold in the south. You have everything.
And is there a region or area of the country where wine production is concentrated? Like, is it the Southeast or where would that be?
During a long time, wine was mainly made in the south. In traditional viticulture, the south has a climate which resembles that of Europe or other places like this. But since some, say, 20 to 30 years, we have started to make wines in the tropics at 9 degrees latitude and also in the central highlands with double pruning and winter harvest. Then there is today not a single region making wine as before. Many are.
Many are. And we should note that, of course, because you're in the southern hemisphere, your harvest is the opposite of North American and European harvest. So you would harvest in maybe March or February. But also, the farther south you go, the colder it gets because you're moving away from the equator, right?
Yes, precisely.
That's why you're equating the southeast with climates that are similar to Europe because they would be cooler the more south you go.
Yes.
You recount the fascinating historical detail. I'm going to probably mispronounce a lot here, but Brás Cubas, its founding father of Brazilian viticulture, making the first wine in 1551. Is there much historical evidence that still exists today that relates back to what he was doing?
Yes, not much, but enough. We have documents, very old documents from such times, preserved at a convent in Santos, which is our main harbor city. They attest to this, the truth of wine being produced in São Paulo at such times. It's a fascinating subject. It would be very good to have someone making MSc or PhD study of such documents.
Yeah, someone needs to
Me-
sort them all out. Maybe you. Your
me-
next book.
not anymore.
Okay. We won't push you too hard. You've just come out with this book.
Thank you.
So you mentioned the role of colonels in Brazilian history, referring to wealthy landowners. How has the legacy of land ownership and agricultural practices, especially the coffee industry, shaped modern viticulture? So I want to tie in the two things because you say Brazil is the world's largest producer of coffee. Is there crossover at all between coffee cultivation practices and viticultural techniques? Any influences or the way the land was farmed at all? Does one influence the other?
We must come back a bit into the 19th century. It was when the Italian immigrants arrived to our south, and they were given pieces of land that's what is today Serra Gaúcha, our main wine producing region. And there were no colonels at all there. Everybody was the owner of its own small piece of land, and they developed family agriculture, wine included. And there is no coffee there up till today. The climate does not allow. The relations between coffee and wine have started very much more recently when double pruning and winter harvest developed here in a coffee region. And today the vines are planted in the same places where coffee does well, in slopes with little risk of frosts, better drained terrain, many times together, side by side, grapes and coffee groves.
Oh, that's fascinating. I mean, we hear about grapes in Australia. There's eucalyptus, minty eucalyptus trees growing close by. Sometimes the wine will have a minty flavor. Do the grapes or wines in Brazil get a coffee taste?
I have tasted, and not only me, we have many people have tasted our Sauvignon Blancs made by double pruning and winter harvest. Many of them have a taste or a smell of green coffee beans. This
Ah, okay.
could be related perhaps to the neighborhood of those cultures, but I cannot affirm it. It should be researched, certainly investigated.
It's another book that needs to be another PhD thesis.
Yeah.
We're stocking them up here. Do the grapes and coffee beans kind of react the same way that the higher up you plant, the higher altitude, the colder it is, but the more acidity is retained in both the grapes and the coffee beans, and therefore the wine and the finished coffee?
Yes, you can say so, because in higher terrains the temperature is lower, and this is good for coffee and grapes, although you cannot rise too much or it will be too cold for both.
Sure, sure, absolutely. We should get to that technique that you keep referring to because it's fascinating. So, you tell in your book that Brazil is unique in the world for having three distinct types of viticulture. So, the traditional way of growing and harvesting grapes, tropical, as well as something called DPWH. And you've said it, double pruning winter harvesting. And so, for our listeners, can you briefly explain the differences? Let's dive into double pruning winter harvesting. What does that mean?
Say, if you plant vines here in places where it is too humid and too warm at that harvest time, you won't get good quality grapes. But if this place has a winter which is not too cold, which has sunny days and fresh nights, cool nights, you succeed in having the harvest during such a time, you have good grapes. That's precisely what double pruning makes. You prune in January, you start a new growth cycle, and the wines will be ripened during your winter, which is exactly as I said. So the winter harvesting. Dry time, sunny days, cool nights. This is very successful here.
So, are they getting two harvests? I'm probably messing this up, but are they getting two crops a year in these tropical regions?
With double pruning and winter harvest, the normal harvest is cancelled. The growers just do not harvest. They throw away the grapes. So there is only one harvest. But in tropical viticulture in the northeast, you have In fact, more than two harvests a year. This seems strange, but it's possible. In such regions, the vine grows without stopping if you don't stop it. And you stop it by cutting their water supply. You can start a new cycle anytime just by irrigating. And the cycle is shorter than 6 months. So if you take an average of, say, 10 years, 15 years, and see how many harvests you had, you may have 2.3, 2.5 harvests per year, average, of course.
Wow. Wow. And so the grapes are growing in this lush environment, growing more quickly than they would anywhere else in the world. And so you can harvest twice, maybe even three times a year.
Yeah, but it's important to say that the environment is not lush at all. It's semi-arid. It's irrigation and the dry climate that allows this.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's
If you're
interesting.
harvesting grapes after 6 months, have they developed, the phenolics, the flavors and the complexity in the grapes? Like they're growing very quickly. So are they still producing complex wines?
Yeah, the growth cycle of the vine allows it perfectly. Of course, the wines in the northeast of tropical viticulture, they have lower acidity than in cooler regions. To compensate that, the fruit is very ripe, the wines are lush. The wines are lush for sure, and they are very agreeable.
Well, I suppose if you've got a country where it never gets cold enough for the vines to have to go to sleep or to winter, they just keep producing and you would get those double harvests. Yeah.
We have true dormancy only in the south, the deep south. There, the vine enters dormancy. Otherwise, no.
That is fascinating. So there's that type, the double pruning, winter harvesting, DPWH. What is tropical viticulture? How does it differ from, say, traditional viticulture or what we just talked about? What's special about tropical viticulture?
Well, first of all, of course, it's a viticulture that happens in tropical places. Say at 9 degrees south, it's very near the equator. In such regions, it's very warm, and you have to adapt the grapes to such environment. It's precisely there that you can control the number of harvests you have, the number of cycles you have, just by that water supply. If you cut, no growth. If you give, you have it.
Right. Huh. You also note that these double pruning winter harvest Syrah wines tasted more like those from the northern Rhone in France than from, say, Australia and their Shiraz. Why would that be?
It's mainly because in winter harvest, we are getting grapes in a cooler environment than the Australian do. Think about, for instance, McLaren Vale or Barossa. It's quite warm there when harvest happens. Here in our winter, Syrah does very well. It's the best adapted variety so far. And the wines resemble those of Northern Rhone by having savoriness, by having pepper, black pepper, and bacon, smoke, and they are quite complex here. And a fresh acidity.
Yeah.
They are quite good.
Okay. You discussed the challenge of one year there was such excessive rainfall during the flowering of the vines, it lowered yields to less than 41% in 2023. That's got to be a huge challenge. Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed our chat with Tufi. Here are my takeaways. Number 1, why are the sparkling wines the most successful of all Brazilian wines? As Tufi explains, Brazil has all sorts of sparkling wines from traditional method, like they do in Champagne, to sweet, made from muscat in a very zesty fashion, also tank method sparklers, but all of them have one very important character. It's fruit ripeness, because fruit is so forward in Brazilian wines. They can still be elegant, or, as he says, very well declared at other times, but it's easy to perceive them and easy to like them. There's also very fresh character to their sparklers. Number 2, how does double pruning and winter harvesting help Brazilian vineyards achieve higher quality wines? As Tufi explains, if you plant vines here in places where it's too humid or warm, at harvest time you will not get good quality grapes. But if the site of planting is sunny days and cool nights, if you've succeeded in having the harvest during such a time, you'll have a good harvest. That's precisely what double pruning means. You prune in January, you start a new growth cycle, the vines will be ripened during Brazilian winter, then you have winter harvesting. Sunny days, cool nights. It's a very successful approach in Brazil. And number 3, how did family farming traditions shape Brazil's wine regions? And what's the crossover between coffee and grape cultivation? As Tufi says, we must go back a bit in time to the 19th century, when Italian immigrants arrived and were given plots of land. That's what today is called Serra Gaúcha, the main wine-producing region in the country. The relationship between coffee and wine started only recently when double pruning and winter harvesting developed in the coffee region. Today, the vines are planted in the same places where coffee does well, on the slopes with little risk of frost, better drainage, and many times they're together side by side. In the show notes, you'll find a full transcript of my conversation with Tufi, links to his website, the video versions of these conversations on Facebook and YouTube Live, and where you can order my book online now, no matter where you live, even in a Brazilian rainforest. If you missed episode 266, go back and take a listen. I chat about a wine lover's guide to South America's hidden vineyards from the Andes to the Amazon with author Amanda Barnes. I'll share a short clip with you now to whet your appetite.
Torrontés is easy to drink. There was slightly more serious Torrontés are much more kind of elegant and focused and fresh. I think those are beautiful wines for Asian cuisine or sushi or, those aromatic grape varieties like Gewürztraminer or Muscat that has lots of kind of flavours of its own, and they work quite nicely with slightly spicier foods which can be hard to pair with other wines. You need to make sure that, that your dish is equally as aromatic and flavourful, and then also it's quite light-bodied, so you don't want to go down the road of heavy meat or cream. So those are my recommendations. Asian cuisine and sushi, and still by the swimming pool.
Yeah, absolutely. You won't want to miss next week when we continue our chat with Tufi. If you liked this episode or learned even one itsy-bitsy thing from it, please email or tell a friend about the podcast this week. Do not leave me here alone, especially someone you know who'd be interested in learning more about the wines of Brazil. Most people don't know a lot about the wines of Brazil. It's easy to find the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. Just tell them to search for that name or mine, Natalie McLean Wine, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, their favorite podcast app, or they can listen to the show on my website at nataliemclean.com/podcast. Email me if you have a sip, tip, question, or like to win one of 2 copies of The Wines of Brazil. Beautiful, beautiful book. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on this episode, or if you've read my book or are listening to it. Email me at natalie@nataliemclean.com. In the show notes, you'll also find a link to take a free online food and wine pairing class with me called The 5 Wine and Food Pairing Mistakes That Can Ruin Your Dinner. Oh, and how to fix them forever. Yay! At nataliemclean.com/class. And that's all in the show notes at nataliemclean.com/354. Thank you for taking the time to join me here. I hope something great is in your glass this week, perhaps a Brazilian wine that's new to you. You don't want to miss one juicy episode of this podcast, especially the secret, full-bodied bonus episodes that I don't announce on social media. So subscribe for free now at nataliemclean.com/subscribe. Meet me here next week. Cheers.